of us have come together. Water issues and so, if anyone has any questions in the beginning, we can talk a little bit about that, and then we'll have Jennifer introduce them. We do have a measure B and C. If you'd like a sign for your yard, be sure to put your name and address down, and we will put one in your yard. So, if you have any questions about that, see Lorraine or Jennifer, myself, or Chuck. Well, any questions so far? Okay, Jennifer, it's all you.
So this is our third meeting, and we had our very first meeting. We talked about what are the important points that we needed to really understand, be able to share, talk about as a community to figure out what was best for groundwater community. So the first one we talked about was what's the science of whether or not we need water. So trying to figure out how much water do we have, how do we calculate that. So we did a whole deep dive into that. I learned so much. Hopefully, everybody else did. A lot of us on our Facebook pages, and all of us learned so much more than we ever thought. So went through that process, and so that was really our first kind of big point. The groundwater associated with needs to be updated with accurate data. Usage data has changed. We know more scientifically about our basin. The second question we had, though, was really about the economics and finance. Two kind of separate issues, but connected. Sandra? Oh, it's because Rodney has the thing. Hold on. I'm going to have to borrow your thing. We got fancy. It confused everybody. So the second thing was really about the finance and the economics of what a potential solution like a pipeline or something might look like. And so we started digging into that. And pretty early on, we found a blog post from a economist out of the San Diego area who happens to be sitting next to me now, which we were very intrigued by because I think at one of our meetings, we actually had said we feel like Sigma has gone awry. Can they hear me or is there something else, Tammy? Is sound okay? Okay. So his blog post was titled Sigma Gone Awry, and we all had felt like that was exactly what we were seeing. So it really resonated with a lot of us. Plus, we found it sort of a little bit into our exploration of financial and economic issues. And most of the points that we had, and many more, were really contained there. So I randomly stalked him and reached out to him on LinkedIn, no joke. And he was like, I guess I'll talk to you. Okay. And then I did. And then he was willing to come and share with us the research that he did. During that time, he'll probably talk about it. He actually did some support from Mojave Pistachios in their efforts. So he has a really good understanding of Sigma, not just here in our valley, but across the state. He's a huge resource in water, just in general, water rights, water acquisition. And if you have any background in economics at all, which I do, he has a PhD from the University of Chicago, which is like the coolest school to go to in economics. So there you go. So we are very excited and lucky to have him. He has a lot to share with us. He's willing to stay for questions as well. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Rodney Smith.
Okay, is that still working?
Is it working? Aaron, do you want to give us a thumbs up? Can you hear the sound?
Huh? Can you hear?
I can hear you online.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for the introduction. My name's Rodney Smith. I've been involved in water for 50 years as a professional. Started at the RAND Corporation out of graduate school, where the California legislature came to RAND, a bunch of our young people, young bucks. We looked at the future of water in California that later became adopted by the California legislature. I was born in Fresno. I'm old enough, Fresno was small then. Okay. So I know a lot about rural communities. I would say about half of my clientele are rural communities throughout the western United States. So while I live in San Diego County now, and I think I understand rural communities as well, which is one of the reasons why I was willing to drive up here to be with y'all. Just a short time. But the reason why I think it's a,
You can talk louder for people in the back.
oh, okay. Oh, I see this.
Stand up.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I used to be a professor, so I'll try to channel my lecture mode for a second. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I think it's important for this community, as are many communities in California, of how to live under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And I've been involved in various matters of adjudicated groundwater basins in the state since the late 1980s, early 1990s. So this is something I know quite a bit about. I'm also working right now with other groundwater basins in Southern California. And so what I want to share with you is the lessons I've learned about how to think about a groundwater basin, what are the economic issues to think about, and then, as mentioned, as disclosed in my blog, I worked with Mojave Pistachios in 2021 when they were when the setting of the groundwater replenishment fee was set. So I actually know something about it too. So even though I drove in the car, not a truck, I do know something about the subject matter, even in Ridgecrest, okay? What I'd like to do is just hit some of the big takeaways of the issues of what to think about. First thing you got to do is understand the dimension of the challenge. What I mean by that is what she was saying. Well, you got to learn about your basin. And your basin is not unusual to others. You have different viewpoints of what the basin is, where is it going, and what's the impacts of different policies. And all the different people will get what I call in my blog dueling hydrologists, where, the Groundwater Agency brings in Steve Johnson, who I happen to know. In fact, he and I used to belong to the same country club years ago. So I know Steve personally. And then, of course, like Mojave Pistachio people, they bring in their own experts. So you have dueling experts. The most important thing is to get into a policy where you monitor your resource. You look at, in light of all the information that's available, where do you want to start on how you develop and use your resource? And then you start looking at the impacts through your monitoring program, and you see which hydrologist is more accurate than the other. So that's something that's very important. So that's step one. Sorry to encroach on your first meeting. I was informed by someone the other day the Groundwater Agency lost their model that they used in 2021. Lost it. It may be true, maybe I've been informed by a really good source. But the Groundwater Agency has lost their model. They cannot present it in litigation. Yeah. No, well, it should be a computer model. Digital. They can't find it. Well, they're going into court trying to overcome that challenge. My understanding is the other side, who has their own experts, have replicated their model under their assumptions. And I guess the lawyers are fighting over what's admissible right now. By the way, one thing, I'm an economist. And of course, as I was telling Jennifer, in the early 80s, a very prominent water lawyer in California told me we don't need economists in water. Let the lawyers and the engineers take care of everything. But the good news is within 10 years, we became very close friends. We used to go on golf trips together. So there's hopes for at least some lawyers. So that's the first thing is define your problem, understand your resource, monitor your resource, get the data, test what people are saying. Next thing you have to do in adjudications is define your pumping rights. Who has the right to pump? Next thing is, what do we mean by a right to pump? It's the right to extract a designated quantity of water over a period of time. But it's common in a lot of adjudications that to the extent as you monitor the impact of the pumping, if it starts to look unacceptable, you have a defined policy of how we'll begin to restrict pumping. You need to have, in other words, a good plan. In Texas, I do work in Texas, so even though I live in California, I can do work in Texas. The Edwards Aquifer, they defined pumping rights, but they had to manage the impact of the pumping on some springs for endangered species. So they have rights that will talk about how much you pump as a function of springs. So if you're in an area where you're worried about the adverse impacts of pumping, monitor it and define a strategy of pumping, okay? Next big thing is, now I'll get to economics. The fees that are imposed by a water agency have to be related to the cost of an actual plan of action.
Not just paying the lawyer.
Not just paying the lawyers. No, this is very serious. And by the way, it's not only true as a matter of economics, it's true under the California Constitution. Prop 218 says that a public agency can set fees provided that's reasonable apportionment of the cost of the activity. Okay? Those are the three things. Now let me go to the application up here. When I did my blog, I put on my hat because I have private sector clients, private equity clients. We do due diligence on proposed investments. We help people raise money, to undertake projects. So what you got to do is you got to be pretty serious about things. And if the only takeaway I'll give you is that the groundwater agency fails, just failed. They set up two types of fees, a small fee for mitigating the short-term effects of pumping on the groundwater basin. Then they put up a big fee for a war chest fund. Great question. Remember I say I also in Atlantic, so I'm used to the Socratic method. So you did not interrupt me. You asked a good question. Okay. So what I'm going to say is, what the district said, oh, we think we need so much water. We need to import it. So they set the big fees to fund a war chest for acquiring water rights. Those fees were set without having a plan. It was a war chest. The way you would do this in prudence is you'd say, okay, what is our plan? And then say, how are we going to fund it? Now, one of the things as an economist is who's going to buy the water that you want to develop and import, okay? No, the war chest was only to put money aside to pay the consultants and all that, but also to acquire enough money so that, oh, we think we need to buy so many state water entitlements, and we think the cost will be $10,000 per unit to buy the right. So we need to levy a fee for 5 years that generates enough money to be put in the bank, plus pay the expenses along the way. Okay? That is what your assessment fees are. Now, how would you do this in the real world? I don't mean to suggest Woodcliff is imaginary. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, how would you do this? Okay. Well, what you would do is figure out, among other things, okay, you got to start with the assignment, you got to study your resource. The technical work of the dueling experts, like Mojave, Pistachio, and some of the other companies, they had hydrologists who were very good reputation, reputable people, and they think there's a lot more water that's available in the basin than the groundwater agency thinks, doing hydrology, okay? One of the interesting things about their own work was they said, well, we have two fees. We have the small fee that mitigates the impacts of your pumping till at least 2035, and the big fee for the war chest. Well, from a perspective of responsible management of a resource, okay, we'll assume that the agency's expert was correct. The $14 or $15 an acre foot fee, whatever it is sufficient to mitigate until 2035. Okay. And both in my blog, I point out then what you should do is have a fee that starts there, and then have what I call a plan of how you're going to develop your solution before you start the war chest. Right now, in different states, we're putting together some investment opportunities, and there's no way can you go to the capital market and say, just give me a lot of money, and I'll tell you later how I'm going to spend it. Well, you have some parenting challenges. But so you see, it's on its head. It's just on its head. Now, the next thing that I pointed out is that if you look at, I focus on, Mojave pistachios. If you look at the economics of pistachios, they're very valuable, but they're not as valuable as the big fig. So what you're doing is you're pushing some people out of business. Okay. What you said the city here is paying these big fees?
I know the water district is the only one.
Okay, the water district. So all the people that are served by the water district, you're paying the big fee. You may not be a farmer. You all don't look like farmers, but that means you're paying a lot for your water service.
And therein lies the problem.
Therein lies the problem. The big question is why? Okay? So what I did is said that looking at in my blog piece, we can goes more technical detail, but taking their own view about it needs only a few dollars to mitigate at least to 2035, that that should be the only fee that should have been levied until you have a plan. Now, what would a plan look like? Well, where are you getting water rights? Under what terms and conditions? Have you negotiated with someone and even did a term sheet that would say, you know, we will sell you water rights under these terms and conditions, under these pricing? They build a war chest without that information.
Are you suggesting that they come to people with water and say, we like your water for a certain period of time, or we like to buy it from you?
That's what you would do in the real world. You would go and say, okay, if I need to acquire water, I would actually go to someone to find out the terms and conditions of getting the water, as opposed to assuming I just think it's $10,000 per unit. I'll get there too. You're out, yeah. I love roadcasts already. Okay, no, this is great. Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah. Well, it is. They bought it before Sigma.
I know, but
Yeah, yeah.
they had a they had a deal on how much water they built.
No. At that time, the if you since there was no adjudication here at that time, the landowner had the right to pump as much as they want. That was their legal right. What Sigma did is said, well, there's to the extent there's overdraft, we need to change how we manage the basin for the long-term vitality of the basin. That's that's the overall objective, which makes sense to me too. But it's the details of the how. Okay. Now let's go to the pipeline. Only the subject matter. You see, at the time they were setting these rates, they didn't even know what the cost of a pipeline was. Well, they do.
It's up
to 400 million. It's up to 400 million so far.
as of 2 years.
As of 2 years ago. And okay, this one thing, when I look at projects, I look at a cost estimate, I look at the date of the cost estimate, and then often these projects don't start getting to bid until 5 years out. So the more interesting question is not what the cost is today, but what do you reasonably anticipate to be when you want to do it? And for larger infrastructure projects, there's a lot of evidence that, especially in water projects, they're late, they're over budget relative to initial estimates. So this up to 400 number is as of 2 years ago, right? But the next thing I want to say about the project, about the pipeline is, and I got this, I want to be sure I citing my document correctly. This Clean Energy Capital Group on September 9th, 2024, wrote a letter to the agency where they said these are our estimates. The Clean Energy Capital Group in September 2024 wrote a letter to the agency saying, here's our preliminary estimates. That's where the 400, it's a consultant.
That was the consultant water district. Groundwater authority thinks it's gonna be 200.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. 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 And when you look at those numbers, the price, the cost of that water is astronomical. It's astronomical. So as an economist looking at the early planning, I would say, are you sure you really need the water? Duh. Yeah, find that out. Find that out. Now, what I found interesting, even 2021, as I said, even the agency's hydrologist was saying, till 2035, there's a small mitigation, but long term we have to invest, which is fine. Do it that way. Now, the difficulty is there's a couple nuances about water world that I'd like to share with you. First of all, the water right is anticipated to be acquired from the state water project. That's a totally unreliable water supply. If you have a contract for an acre foot, only in very wet years will you get an acre foot. Some years it may be as low as 5% of an acre foot. Right now, the state is assessing maybe half an acre foot per acre. So I want you to think about, you have water rights that fluctuate like this. I apologize for doing a professorial thing. Question: how big of a pipeline do you need?
On the hill over there, we just need to have it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you need that has to be connected somewhere where water is. But the point I'm making is,
They're talking about the LA aqueducts.
oh, the LA aqueduct.
They're all very bitter that they steal our water.
Right, no, trust me. Yeah, I know about LA and Inyo County. No. Well, actually, that's a great question. Given the volume of water you want, why don't you just cut a deal with LA?
Bypass, and then we'll just leave it there. We don't need a 55-mile pipe. Yeah. It comes back. $400 million.
When you develop the long-term plan, you always say, what are the alternatives, right? And then assess the pros and cons. So you're right, especially even given the small volumes they're talking about. How to deal with LA. No. Oh, from Avec Kern. It'll be coming off the California aqueduct.
California City.
No, not Cal City, the state project.
So the connection point that the pipeline will begin at the first goal, general management water, just for clarification, the pipeline is supposed to be built will have its connection point at California City Heater Outlet as part of AVEC. So California AVEC East California City.
Right.
That's where the terminus is. They will connect the 6-mile pipeline to go
Right.
to Richmond. It is AVEC.
Right. Yeah.
Could you repeat that for folks on Zoom?
Yeah. The question would be, where is the connection points of the proposed pipeline? And the answer is they're proposing to acquire state project water, deliver it to AVEC, who will then allow this community to connect to AVEC, and it's the last 50 miles we're talking about.
But it's the same water that's in the pipe on the hill.
No, that's LA water.
Ours comes from like Sacramento. Actually, the Featherbridge is north of Sacramento.
Right.
And it goes all the way down and comes.
Right, right.
Doesn't that make sense?
It makes sense. It's just
It
like
makes
water.
sense in the 70s. Sorry. That's why they are only getting 5%.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. By relying on table A entitlement, this is gonna be the yield of your water right. Now, the letter wasn't specific enough to answer this question, but my question was, they had different volumes, targets of annual deliveries. Well, if I'm trying to use a fluctuating, a water source, my size of my pipeline has to be pretty high to get that on average. So I don't know whether or not they've even looked at the properly sized pipeline. I can't tell from the documents. But what this does as an issue, just saying you got to follow where the water's coming from, where it's going, and how is it getting from point A to point B. The other thing is I've been involved a lot in transactions involving state project water. And if you buy a contract from someone in the Central Valley, they have the right to the water lottery, and they have assigned capacity of the California aqueduct up to the point where they take it out. So who you enter into a deal with matters. No, that's the LA aqueduct. Yeah. Yeah, that was done in the early, in the 1920s. And that aqueduct there is the LA aqueduct. Yep. The question was, is it possible to make a deal with LADWP? I would say prudence would be to see if you can do that. Yeah, because as you pointed out, given your proximity, it's not $400 million capital investment.
No, it's one of those stick of dynamite. You got all the water we want.
Right.
Big screwdriver, maybe?
No, that they did approach LA water, and it's a no-go. We're being told by the GA.
Well, the question would be, what did they do and how did they do it?
And did they use those documents?
Well, that I can't tell you. Yes. The question is whether or not LA's exercise of the groundwater rights in the Owens Valley, does that have an impact on your basin? And yeah, there's a cascade of them. And I took your question to be, does LA's pumping impact this basin? That's your question. And I do not know the answer to that. There's a lot of geology though between you.
There's a pipeline that's going to make millions of dollars.
You mean make it, or who's going to pay it?
Get millions of dollars to build this pipeline.
Okay, the question is, if you want to build a pipeline of millions of dollars of investment, who's gonna finance it?
Who's gonna profit?
Who's gonna profit? State-approved contractors, I would imagine.
Well, okay, there was also the comment that state contractors will make money as well. That's true. But you would have to, let's suppose a water agency was to do that. They would have to go out into the municipal bond market and sell the bonds, okay? I've been involved in this, and I know because I've gone to water agencies, for rating agencies before. How are we getting, what's the revenue behind your bond offering? And then what they'll have to do is say, oh, well, here's our customers, and then they will pay.
We will pay. We will pay.
Yeah, because the water user will pay, right? And then the question will be on the pushback, what do these water rates look like? And who's going to buy the water?
Because what I'm saying is, the people who are pushing this pipeline, the ones who want to make the money. Profiting from it.
Who makes money again?
Right. Yeah, for them. A question.
You said, so I make sure that I'm understanding your.
That's great.
Is that not mitigated by?
Whoa. Well, I'll tell you what, you have a choice between how big you size your pipe, but you need storage somewhere. You're absolutely right. You're either going to need storage at the beginning of the pipeline or at the end.
So, once again, George, I ran water district over on the coast that was connected to the state water project.
Oh, which one?
Like, do you mind if I help explain this to the question?
Please.
George, can you do a favor and come up here and use his mic though, because if not, Rodney has to repeat it for everybody on Zoom.
Stand next to you, and I'll talk loud.
That would be
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. That should work, George.
So the way it works is at the water district I ran that was connected to the state water project, which is what the Groundwater Authority is proposing we do, essentially connect the state water project. Every year, the state looks at the snowpack and they go, this year you can have this much water from 0 to 100% of your allocation. So my water district had 2,000 acre feet. Some years we would get 1,000, some years we would get 2,000, and some years we would get none. I think we had 1 year where we didn't get none, and some years we get 5%. So when you look at it on average, we talk about the fluctuation, and this is water that's coming, down through the Central Valley. That water averages out about 60% of what your allocation is. So if you need to buy water, you need 3,000 acre feet. You need to buy 5,200 acre feet if you really want to get 3,000 acre feet. So what he's explaining is like you have to buy more than you actually need because they don't give you 100% of what you bought.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely fair, George.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank
Does
you.
that explain your question?
So your pipeline,
But then your pipeline is behind. But
Yes,
you also have to move the water
Right, so-
when it's there.
Yeah, so you have to have a pipeline appropriately sized to haul enough water so that in the years where you're not getting a lot of water. Now, I will just say that that's mitigated, as was noted, because AVEC has storage in the ground. So AVEC gets water that fluctuates up and down, but they can deliver, unless it's a really extreme year where there's a whole lot of water coming or very little water coming, they can generally deliver a reasonable amount.
the size of the pipe,
You got to buy storage. Exactly.
That's correct.
That is absolutely, the question was, you need to match the pipeline with storage. Both George and I agree. AVEC will not give you storage for free.
So if you purchase, let's say, just taking a random, say,
Right.
let's say you purchase water from somewhere like in Merced, a client there. Do you get to just get it here to the terminus at Cal City? How do you get it here if you purchase water that's Merced's water?
State project water. Well, the problem, and that illustrates what I said earlier. If you have a state contractor that's in Merced County, which is a hypothetical, but they just roll with it. They have rights to use a portion of the capacity of the California aqueduct to Merced. That's it. That's what you buy.
How do you get it to Cal City?
So then you'd have to wheel from that point down to AVEC. Yeah. I drove here for a reason. That's okay.
It would be in county or state?
It's in the State Water Project.
Do you want to explain the state water project?
Right.
So what is the state water project?
Okay. Okay, the question is, what's the State Water Project? Well, in the 60s, the state developed some infrastructure to capture and deliver water. So they went out and member agencies entered into contracts with the state that you build it, we'll pay, and get our allocations we pay for. State of California.
So it never behooves somebody to buy something from the state, because even if you have a contract with them, if it goes belly up, they have lawyers forever that are on retainer because they pay them. In some little town like this one, it's never going to be able to say, but you said you would supply and store, and now we're, Tango uniform on.
Okay, she's worried about the state reneging. Yeah, it's a reasonable concern. What I would say is we do know that generally speaking, these contracts are enforced.
Yeah. Let me speak real quickly to my experience too, because this will really tells a good story. So the water district I ran was actually Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Oh, okay.
And we were connected to the state water project. We signed on one of those early contracts he talked about. We paid $5 million a year, a flat fee to have access to that water. In a year that we got zero water, we still paid $5 million for no water. We then paid extra if they actually delivered us water. Now, typically the extra was, even if they delivered us 2,000 acre feet, it was like another $250,000. So the contract that we had was, here, state, we're going to give you $5 million a year in the hopes that you will deliver us some water for a far less price. That's how the system works. That's called Table A water at the state.
Yeah. It would be a good idea. Jennifer told you I'm from University of Chicago. We always said, I learned that it's always good to own and control your destiny. Yeah. It's always good. Oh, they got a permit from the State Water Resources Control Board.
I think it's like the water that falls from the sky, or is in like the undesignated like.
Well, yeah, as you say, it starts up in Northern California, snowpack. It goes down, it goes into Oroville or Oroville Reservoir and other reservoirs. And they got the right, as by the way, private owners of water rights in the state, at least post 1914, they got a permit from the state for a designated quantity of water to be. No. If you have a water right that originates after 1914. 1914, you went to the state Water Resources Control Board and got the permit.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Pump that water into the aquifer. So, and that would be our storage location.
Groundwater recharge.
That is
Possibility.
certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
I will say that the water district back in 2011 was negotiating with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to have a banking project in the El Paso region. And it, for reasons that we don't understand, that just didn't happen. LA decided not to make that particular investment, but there is indications that yes, it is possible if you brought water over in a pipe or got it out of the LA aqueduct that you could store it. Correct.
Well, actually, sir, that's sort of what the plan of replenishment water is. You bring the water in to offset the negative impacts of the pumping.
Talking about storage, so when you're paying punctuation, storing water, wasn't clear to me on this end, where are we going to take water or are we going to pump it back in the ground?
Yeah. Yeah, but at the head of the pipe, before the water gets here, you need the pipeline large enough to manage that volatility.
By requiring constant maintenance, and those of us who live there, you know how much fun it is, more water than throwing, and how much maintenance is involved with that.
Right.
Can you repeat that?
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's right. Okay, I've got to repeat.
Giving me dirty looks on the
Yeah, yeah. The general comment was when you get the water over, if you get the water over here, you will probably be storing it locally, but there's a lot of infrastructure that you need to do that. So a well-defined project plan would tell you where the water's coming from, where it's going, how does it get to AVEC, how does it get to California City, how does it come here, and how is it managed? Until you have that written down, you don't have a project.
Is that the plan that they lost?
No. What they lost was their hydrologic model. Right. It has it been produced in the litigation? Oh, okay. Okay. That's a little different. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Want to go take a look at it?
Mhm.
Model, DRI model.
Mhm.
Okay. Just make sure the school understands that model is not the box.
Well, that's not consistent with what I was told the other day, but as I said, that may or may not be true. That's fine. By the way, I hope they do have a model, because at the end of the day, you need to devise a monitoring program for whatever model you want to believe in. You got to have a monitoring program that checks how the world works relative to how you modeled it. I know that, which is great. That's great.
We have over 150 monitoring models.
Great, you guys can go look at it any chance you want.
Right. Yeah.
Interactive.
Right.
So
Yeah.
going back to the project plan, Rodney, one of the questions that we had in our group was like, one of the things we're asking for specifically is we'd like to see like a finance plan that includes this project plan and what the actual costs are that justify this replenishment fee we're paying, which my understanding is one of the highest, if not the highest in California.
Right.
And then we would really like to see a finance committee providing oversight. Just in your experience across the state, are those reasonable? Is that something that's typical to other districts to have, or whether Jay's to have? Is that an unusual thing for us to be asking for, or do you have a better thought on what would be a good way to hold the GA accountable for not gouging us for punishment fee to build a war chest?
Let me say yes, and I'll give you an example. For about 10 years, I was representing Pure Irrigation District in the negotiations on a historic water transfer. And by the way, settling lawsuits on the Colorado River in our spare time. And as being on the negotiator, the board said, you know, they wanted the financial analysis and modeling and all that. And they had a citizens advisory group. There had to be called the, you know, the water conservation group, whatever it's called. And so that was a venue to have that type of discussion. And the the Imperial Irrigation District board, all 5 of them elected, but they were farmers, you know, 2nd, 3rd generation. And so they wanted to be sure that all their growers understood to the best of their ability what's happening and why. So that may be smart politics at least.
Have you looked at the plan that the GA is using?
The plan?
The groundwater
Yeah.
sustainability plan.
The current plan, have you looked at it?
When was that adopted?
Money?
Well, yes, I've looked at that plan. The only reason is, you know, there's a lot of amendments going on plans throughout the state. So,
Your opinion of the plan.
well, the thing, as I said, what it is they had a plan where they said their hydrologic work has concluded they need so much replenishment water. And their plan is we got to long-term bring in that said amount of water for the long-term vitality of the basin, but at least till 2035, there's a small amount of mitigation necessary. That's the plan.
And your opinion of it.
It's incomplete. It's not telling you. It's not telling you a few things. One is, what is a long-term plan?
It's quantifying it.
It's not quantifying, it's not describing it. And what is problematic about the high replenishment fee? It's, as I said, it's a war chest. Saying, I think we need this money to buy these water rights.
They don't have any idea what the water rights are going to cost.
They have an estimate only, yeah. Yeah.
Aerial electromagnetic or airborne electromagnetic studies using the helicopter flyovers.
You know, I don't know. I mean, you know, I'd probably say ask DWR. Don't you?
The question was asked. And approved in other water districts. They just will give you your.
Why? The state of New Mexico as well.
Good question.
Oh.
Right, well, and the answer from the other side is, yeah, no. My question was, we have some new science, it's been proven to be reliable, why are we not looking at that? So we kind of have a roadblock here.
Yeah.
We're asking them to reevaluate this. And there's money in your pocket.
Right.
There's hands in your pocket.
Now, let me say one thing. The state of New Mexico has probably the best long-lived regulation and management of groundwater in the West. So that's almost like saying, wait a minute, you're telling me the best in practice is doing it this way, and we don't want to do it. That's interesting. Yeah, yeah, we're not gonna do it.
I have a general question, since you're an economist, and I'm an engineer.
Right.
At what cost per acre foot, let's say, of water, you know, at the beginning you said water, they're proposing bringing is really expensive. At what cost does water become so expensive that you really can't afford to actually have a green lawn, or you can't afford to build a golf course, or you can't afford to, you know, really improve the quality of life in ways because the water becomes so expensive for either businesses or personal use. Like we talk about water that can be as expensive as greater than $5,000 or $7,000 an acre foot as it's first brought in. Is that water that allows people, regular people, to grow lawns or?
No.
So the question is it?
No, you've already done that.
Does it help all of you out to have a better life?
Right. No, the answer is no. No. Yeah. Right.
So if you could bring water in at $500 an acre foot, you might have a water bill that you can afford to grow a tree.
Right.
So do you have a range of costs?
Yeah. Well, what I think, the landed cost of water, right? What I mean by the landed cost of water, you know, you had to acquire it somewhere, you got to convey it here, you finance it, so, you know, the landed cost of water. I think you get probably in this community over $500 to $600 an acre foot per year. I think you're at the top.
That's,
And by the way, you'd also have to look at, wait a minute, you already have costs in your water systems already. Costs in your water system already. So it's not like you're paying zeros a day. The question really is, suppose I could get more water, but I got to pay an extra $500 an acre foot.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going from zero to there, you're adding. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
people aren't happy with our bills already.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think just another issue to think about, you know, the long-term strategy is that the agreements would be needed to cover yourself against mischief would be very complex. In the Imperial Irrigation District transfer with San Diego, we negotiated one agreement with San Diego, 3 or 4 agreements with other parties, an agreement with the feds, an agreement with the state of California, and we cut some side deals with other states in the Colorado River Basin. Okay. And we had the belt and suspender, the interest of the Imperial Valley. So you also have to think about, it's nice that you'll have some relationship with AVET Kern, that they're going to do something. But, you know, if they get into an emergency in 5 years, you better have them tied down because they care about their ratepayers. Right. So I think that's just the other thing. It's not only the design of the system, but it's also the legal sort of infrastructure of the system.
In maintenance of it.
Yeah. Because what happens is you think you have a mutual understanding with someone, 5 years down, you may find you have a dispute. So actually, the draft.
We have a dual hydrology.
Right, right.
Could you repeat those two statements for folks online?
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna bring two comments together. Hopefully it's good enough. Mentioned earlier about doing hydrology reports, and the question is really, how can you get to that consensus? And I think the answer would be, you're going to have an adaptive plan based on monitoring, so that when you find that how things proceed, how you're going to adapt. Because doing hydrologists, they have their professional opinions, the reasons why they believe they're true, and all that. So the odds that you're going to get them to agree is probably very low. Instead, you have a management plan that says, in light of the diversity of information we have, this is the strategy, how we're going to proceed. We got to monitor, take advantage of our monitoring, and see as we go forward, what is this basin really looking like? If that makes sense.
Starting this project and saying, okay, yeah, we're gonna build a pipeline, now we're gonna monitor. Well, you start monitoring it, then you find out, oh, first report was wrong, the second report was right, and we didn't need the pipeline. Oh, my bad.
Well,
And that was the adjudication that just happened. That was the judge's ruling, was you're going to go with a higher number, but you're going to monitor it.
Right.
And if you start to see a drop,
right,
then you're going to cut your number back.
right.
So that is probably what a judge is going to end up with when that happens.
If and when it happens, yeah.
And in fact, denominated to properly assess the most recent survey, the aerials.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact, substantially more water. And yet there's still some of the road that they know with already data from maybe George, clarify this, George, you
Come on. You need the microphone.
You're asking if the SkyTim data is in the model. In your model, yeah, so let's talk. You have to talk about two different things. The SkyTim data tells you how much water is sitting in this ginormous lake that is beneath our feet. That's what it does. It's a radar that looks down into the ground and it maps out the contours of the valley. You know, so millions of years ago, this was just a big Grand Canyon. Over millions of years, it filled up with sand and rock, and you have to figure out how much water is sitting there underground. SkyTim basically is a flown radar, and it maps out the bottom. And so once you know how big the bathtub is, and then you know also how much sand is there, how much rock,
Right.
how much clay, then you can accurately determine how much water is sitting in the giant lake below our feet. There's a different use of these models. The other critical factor is how much water is actually flowing in. So what you want to do is, you know, the term of art is, you don't want to see negative effects. You don't want to see the water levels continuing to decrease. You don't want to see water quality degrading. You know, you don't want subsidence. You don't want like what you see out in the San Joaquin Valley. And the models really talk about specifically trying to figure out what is the real value of the water that is flowing in as the snow melts and comes down into the mountain and refills this lake below our feet. And you sort of want to use that to estimate how much can we safely pump without having these adverse effects.
Right.
And that's the crux of the argument, is whether that number flowing into the valley is 7,650 or a higher number, 14,000 or whatever is put out there. And that has a tremendous economic impact on the valley. It could determine whether we do or don't need a pipeline.
Right.
It could determine whether we, you know, what other options might exist. And this is what the adjudication is, you know, moving towards figuring out.
Yeah, the only thing. Oh.
Gentlemen here, SkyTim actually changed our safe fuel. Model mentioned SkyTim data, so really didn't affect safe fuel. It's more of how you look at certain inputs like water coming off the aqueduct, some trading basin, a lot of the things that are Well, obviously, we spent a lot of trial there. Point was, something that was never mentioned. My understanding was it. No, that's not. In the district model, it was. That's probably.
Yeah.
You'll have to drop that statistic.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna, let me just say, I'm not gonna speak for our experts, because I'm not one of them, you know, so I'm just gonna say that. You got the impression, this guy Tim. They themselves didn't include it.
If you read the Stanford research, though, it validates the SkyTem data compared to the wells, and then those wells are what goes into the monitoring. I think the
Yeah,
wells.
so
you're not seeing it mentioned there because that's how they validated the well level that they were using. Their modeling is my suspicion. I haven't looked, but it is mentioned in the Stanford. Did you read the Stanford? It does mention what it
So-
costs.
So I will just say this, there are subtle and complex interrelationships between how much water is down there under our feet and how much is in storage and how you calculate how much water is flowing in. And I leave that to the people who are professional hydrologists to do. SkyTem is an important piece of science we use to help us get the best numbers we could.
Yeah, well, I would say the SkyTem, think of that as how much you have in your bank account today. Then you look at going forward, you say, oh, how much more money is coming in? We call that recharge. And then how much am I spending? We call that pumping. Uh-huh.
It was constantly dropping.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, water quality, water drink years ago, water drink today, not the same.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot more TDS, a lot more dissolved solids. There's people in this room that are not water. So we know our water
Right.
quality is
Right.
the issue is that, yes, we may have a lot of water.
That's got to be part of it. Yeah.
Filtration of seawater, in our case, it's not seawater, it's
No.
just extremely brackish water.
Right.
So the point is that I get the return recharges. I'm telling you over time, my personal experience with the citizen,
Mhm.
it's not getting.
Well, I know that you can probably check it on that. And we have another anecdote. And we have another anecdote in the back because that's not what it is.
Good.
And it now is. In addition, I looked back at over 30 years worth of data on my well, and it has varied on 208 for over 30 years, up and down. It has not dropped, up and down, and the water. Also, water quality. That's why the water district was hard, right?
Fine.
And we do live next to a military base that has a lot of random things that have been tested for a long time before they kind of limited what was just being tossed around out there. And yeah, that was eventually going to absorb into the ground. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not actually clean water. If we were a closed basin, my well would be dropping. It wouldn't be going up and down.
And I don't want to get too much in the hydrogeology because
Right.
Rodney's an economist, not a hydrogeologist. Maybe we should bring in a hydrogeologist. I don't know, not today.
But I do deal with hydro, and what I would say a couple of things for the Zoom participants. A resident said they have a well, and that over time, the water quality has not diminished and the levels are not falling. What I want to say, this is very common in a basin. A basin is not a bathtub. A basin is a complex hydrogeology mechanism. So it's possible location matters. In fact, it does. It's like real estate. Groundwater is like real estate. Location can matter. And so that's probably why you want to have 150 monitoring stations, right? Rather than 2, because you got to get the network out there, given your understanding of the complexity of the basin, where you got to be monitoring. So
I have a hardcore economics question.
Okay.
So most people in the world do not think like economists, because there is a whole thought of, what is my marginal cost? Economists
Right.
don't think on the margin. They tend to think, getting this, what is this going to really pay off for the benefit that we're going to see? So I don't know that, I know a lot of people just looking at that big cost and seeing that's a big number. But my question coming into it is the benefit we're going to get for this investment we're going to get, is it possible for it to be worth it? And having looked at the numbers, looked at other projects, do you think the benefit of bringing in a pipeline of this cost, getting water at that level, is that benefit worth that? Or should we be looking at like smaller local conservation cutting back?
Okay, so everyone heard it and they heard it,
They
right?
should have, because I yelled.
Okay, good. Okay.
Tammy says yes.
Yeah, okay. This gets back to George and mine when he asked me the question about, the price, and I gave you my answer. Yeah. Well, I'll go back to the thing though. A good advocate for an investment would include answering your question. What's the benefit? And can we afford it? And the other thing, and this is where I see some problems with Sigma as it's being thought of today. Oh, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act.
It's the law.
It's why we're in this.
Yeah, yeah. In the legislative process, they put undesirable as an adjective. No, so the point is something could go down. For example, your elevations may go down. Well, in light of the benefit of pumping, is that an undesirable impact or not? And a lot of the Sigma implementation to date has not gone to that level of the balancing of your question yet. But I think the tensions that we're seeing in the implementation of this is going to put finally some focus on that question.
And for me, that came back. I know not everybody thinks ag should happen in a desert, but I mean, it does. And so when I saw the pipeline, I just assumed it was a way to maintain ag in the desert, because I work in the valley. I grew up in the valley. I see water pumps all over the place. So if you're bringing in a pipeline because it keeps industry, because it allows the industry to grow, and that's a reason that really, really could happen,
Right, which
was
was
for 50 years. Like there's some things where you might be able to say like, okay, cost versus benefit. This is a huge chunk of change, but we can see it being realized.
right.
But instead, we're seeing more costs and we're losing ag.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, all I'm seeing is already downsides plus the cost.
Right.
Where's the benefit?
Yeah, well, in my blog posts, I go through some, diagrams and all that to show that the high replenishment rate alone, separate and apart from pipeline costs, probably is going to eliminate ag. I don't know, but who knows? Maybe, yeah. I can't speak to. I don't know. Maybe there's pot branches up here. Maybe that works.
Go out there so people like to hear them. Just since you're an economist.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like AVEC. So AVEC has a series of water rates. They sell farmers untreated water to water their farms for about $500 an acre foot, and farmers will buy it at that cost. Here, when the replenishment fee was imposed upon Mojave pistachios at $2,000 an acre foot, they said, we can't afford it. Searles Valley Minerals at that same cost said, we can't afford it. Those are solid data points. We recognize that those types of businesses can't operate at that cost of water. And then you have to ask the next question is it possible to bring in water at a cost they can't afford? Our current estimates are that water that's coming in the pipeline would be like $5,000, which doesn't sound like it does, maybe $4,000 or $5,000 is our
Right.
estimate from Clean Energy Capital. And you start to say, well, geez, if Searles can't afford it at 2 and farming can't afford it at 2, 5,000 is a pretty high number.
Right,
And that's where the economics come in
right.
and your cost benefit. So those are some data points you can think about just notionally that might help you wrap your head around that question that you asked. Is that okay?
Yeah,
So we currently pay, you said 500 is what our water costs right now.
No, that's what ADEC charges farmers.
But what does our water cost us right now? Given my IWB water district bill, how much does that cost me per acre foot that you're
Let me just do a quick count. This is gonna be really rough. I know our budget about $15 million a year, and we're using divided by 5,800 acre feet. About $2,000 an acre foot with all of our expenses. And so you have to understand that includes tanks,
right.
wells, all the keeping your meters going, having the staff to do customer service, and all the other things that go along.
But we're bearing
Right.
that cost comfortably. So if we had more water that came in, like you said, it's additive, it's a replacement.
Yeah,
so
right.
If we had more water that came in like at 1,000, 2,000 acre feet, that would be one thing. But 4,000 to 5,000 gets to the point where people should probably just pack up and move and find another option. Like that's that much higher in my head.
Mhm.
Or not.
Or not. Well, my 15-year-old's doing great.
Right. Right. Okay, let me give you another data point. I live in Fallbrook, in North San Diego County. It's the Rainbow Municipal Water District. My wife happens to be elected director. And in the Depression, Fallbrook said they were the avocado capital of the world. They are no longer the avocado capital of the world for a lot of reasons, but the price of water, which is around your $2,000 number, the avocado trees are getting subdivided. Now,
You're getting
subdivided, but this is in North, yeah, I mean, in the sense, okay, housing comes in North San Diego County. So you'll start to have what types of land use changes make sense, right?
Right.
For your circumstance.
Yeah. So, you have to ask yourself, what business is going to come here?
What's going to come here?
Because it's not going to be a business using a lot of water.
Right.
And we couldn't get businesses. I mean, look at our growth; it's been very stagnant. We've had trouble getting businesses to come here at the current rate of water. So if it goes up that much, what prospect is there really for growth?
Well, you'd have to I'm trying to be even about that is the fundamental question. That is the fundamental question. And I haven't seen the case statement. Right.
And like you said, the state water, they're not guaranteed that much water. So you're paying for it, but you're not getting it. So that's a great system. I like that.
Yeah.
Sacramento doesn't.
Yeah. No, I mean, but that's the challenge here. In my blog, which I pointed out, who's going to buy the water at these rates? That's the fundamental question. And if you put on your Wall Street hat that I run a little bit with, someone's going to say, anyone contract to buy this water at these rates? That may be the fatal flaw in the finance. Now, of course, like everyone else in the water world, they look for federal money. They look for state money to buy down the costs. And I'd say good luck in this economic environment.
Well, that is what the kind of groundwater authority, and Ronnie, correct me if you think this is unfair, but they say, like, well, the feds, the Navy, the state, there's been allocations made, even though they haven't appropriated. There's been, there could be state grants, and so we need to be in critical overdraft so we can get state grants. Do you think that is a good strategy that has a realistically positive outcome for us?
Well, what I would suggest, if that's the pitch, why don't you just tap all your other efforts and go get the money? Right? Yeah.
And there's no money.
Yeah. Grew up in the 60s, so I do a Cheech and Chong imitation. Yeah. Now, right. 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 Yeah.
Repeat that question.
But
Your
there's
comment.
no plans for, but we don't ask what else fast, George.
Hmm. Okay, the comment from the floor was, given that especially the high replenishment fees was the war chest plan, I mean, the war chest charge, there's no underlying plan. In other words, they got money from ratepayers ahead of a plan. Now, what I did mention, like Mojave Water Agency, they acquired some table A rights, I don't know, 2009 or whenever it was. But what they did is they already have a plan. And they were able to say, if we get this more water rights, we can manage it. And the cost to us is reasonable because we will finance.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So on the AVEC, charges and what they charge for water, they have a special rate of about $1,800 an acre feet specifically for Mojave Water Agency. Is that the fee they're charging? Is that what is AVEC transport? Is that their wheeling fee to bring that water to Mojave, or is that where it comes from?
It can't be because the Mojave Water Agency is already a state contract.
Yeah, I just didn't understand why when I looked at the AVEC rate.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
cost for Mojave.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense because because I studied that transaction years ago, and they were just using their own advance capacity.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It just
Yeah.
seemed odd.
Is our replenishment fee considered high
Yes.
compared to others? How high?
It's at least double. At least double.
Any other?
Yeah.
Any other?
Yeah.
That's what
Well-
we're referring to as the war chest charge.
Well, you'll have to look at their financial reports.
Well, no, it's not being stored. It's being paid. There's actually a breakdown of it that we're going to be sharing. Yeah. We went through the audits of all of the years, and it's $27 million. The last year hasn't been audited yet. 17 million, I'm looking at Tammy because she may remember more. 17 million on consultants to the pipeline, another something on lawyers, 1.5 million to the city of Ridgecrest. Where we're gonna, their capital core lobbyist was 1 point something. It's the GA, is what they're saying. So there's not, I don't think there's a huge balance. Not just high water, but to maintain the level of life. Water is not the only thing that we do everything we do for this. What is don't forget it. But also, you all know that conservation is something we do. We have to target into that. We have to approach that for nature around it, so that all has balance. It just is so heavily unbalanced where so much energy is being put right now because we have to balance it. It's just extremely unbalanced right now.
Okay, the comment from the floor was that if you look at the vitality of your city's future, there's many things that have to be looked at. Water is important, but so are other things.
Money needs to be, we can't be spending it all on one.
Right. 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 Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of us, we saw the ticket price for the $400 million pipeline. I mean, I love the pool. I liked it more when it was an $8 million pool than a $22 million pool. I looked at that as like, man, that's like, 20 pools, even if the, more expensive pool. Like that's a lot expensive infrastructure. we could,
yeah, right.
Big maybe, I don't know, then we could.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of pools we put in every time.
Well, that does raise. Right, right. Well, that comment does raise the point of what's the overall development plan of your community, and what are the various pieces.
It is 7 o'clock, which is how long I think we had planned for the meeting to go. Does anybody have kind of any last burning questions before we give Rodney a huge round of applause? Also, is there any questions online? Because I never asked that. Just ignoring all those nice people on there. Thank you for hanging in there with our tech. It's a separate issue, yeah. But if you stop by the table right there, one of our folks can definitely talk about the issue. So let me just say thank you, Rodney. This was so incredibly informative.
My pleasure.
Thank you for taking the time to drive over here. And thank you all. If you are not following our Facebook page already, please do so. That's where we post kind of meetings and updates and things. One of the concerns that a lot of folks have who are in this room is Measure B and C. So there's information there I think Tammy shared. Anything you want to close with, Tammy, since you're standing in the arcade? She's probably been playing skee-ball this whole time. Oh, yeah, we can. probably have another one in about a month as well. It'll be about a month. So stay tuned for that. Thank you all for coming.